Last time on this series, I built something that was futuristic and high in the sky. And this time, I want to build something that fulfills one of those two criteria. I guess that explanation doesn't really narrow it down all that much. Today, I want to build a rustic airship. So, then you might be wondering, Kian, why on earth have you built a giant boulder in the sky if you're building a rustic airship? And that's because, well, it fits with the lore I have in mind for it, and that's based around an old series of books I read maybe about 7 years ago or something. I think they were called The Edge, and the theory was that there were these rocks that were buoyant, and they built ships around these rocks, and it was quite cool and elegant. These books, they had little illustrations in some of the pages, and they were quite amazing to look at, so I thought I would try to recreate something like that. Another thing that is quite interesting about the lore behind these stones in the particular series of books is that their buoyancy responds to temperature. So that means if it is cooled, for example, the stone will sink, where if it is heated, it will float. And I really kind of want to put something within this build that represents that sort of function, so it looks more than just a sculpture, if that makes any sense. Anyways, now what I want to do is I want to lay out the specific dimensions of the ship so I can visualize kind of how I want it to look better, and that's kind of the step-by-step process I do for most of my builds, especially things as shapely as boats. Okay, so besides the fact that I got a little carried away, the first thing you might notice with the shape of this hull is the fact that the front end, this is supposed to be the front if you haven't noticed, and the back end are quite different in length, and that's all to do with the balance that I want to show with the ship. See, the front is going to be largely this level. It's not going to extend any further up or have any large structures on it. However, the end over here is going to have the quite tall and rickety looking cabin of the ship, so I've made it shorter in order to accommodate for that, and make the ship seem a little more balanced around its source of buoyancy, which of course is this stone in the center. Now, the reason that I chose birch for the hull instead of just extending the spruce all the way down to the bottom is because I wanted to spread out the color palette a little bit and give this ship a little bit more intrigue. I'm not quite sure how to say it. I see so many ship designs with a single color in their hull, and I'm guilty of this too, and while they look cool for the most part, it's a little bit hard to look at the same block over and over again, so I thought I would try to make this one a little bit different throughout, and make it a little more interesting to look at. Plus, it lends itself to the overall fantasy, cheery style theme that I'm going for here. I have also started building the deck, and I originally was torn between these two choices, either jungle wood or dark oak wood, for the same reasons as this hull. I wanted to add some color to it. And now that I look at it in the scope of the entire build, I think the dark oak wood is going to be a better choice than the jungle wood because it's more of a neutral tone. It doesn't interfere with the overall chocolatey color of this build like the jungle wood does. The jungle wood's just a little bit too pink-ish for my liking. I'm not sure. Maybe it's just me. The jungle wood never really sits right with me. Let me know what you think about the jungle wood texture. Is it your favorite? Is it your least favorite? Do you not care? Tell me. I'm interested to know. Anyways, in addition to finishing the deck of this ship, I'm going to also start detailing the cabin and the other amenities that will appear on the deck of dark oak. So let's get to that. And now there are bees. This is for a method that I tried to make it look like there were ropes holding down these cargo pieces on the deck. We'll get to every other detail later. Unfortunately, it's kind of hard to position them, and bees were the easiest fit since they have such a small hitbox and don't die if they touch the floor, because obviously any other animal hanging by a lead will accumulate fall damage until it dies from even the slightest impact, which is a little bit annoying. I'm not sure if it's a glitch or an intended feature, but regardless, it's here, so bees are the animal that I've had to use. Anyways, down here, this end of the ship is going to be the sleeping cabin. I've kind of decorated it minimalistically, tried to keep the shape of the hull reminiscent inside as well as outside, so you could tell that you're inside a ship instead of just a square room. And that's why the beds are up here instead of down here, because down here is the outside of the ship. And so that's why I didn't fill in this bottom part. That, and because the roof is quite low, I didn't want to make it too cramped. Anyways, for the cargo in question, I tried to pick a mixture of colorful things and not so colorful things, so that's why I've gone for beehives, this weird terracotta, barrels, and anvils. It's a nice mix. It's balanced. It's not overly rambunctious, but it's not overly understated that it just blends into the rest of the ship, which I don't want it to. I want it to look like cargo, like it's not always there. Anyways, moving on to the center stone, you remember I talked about the stone's buoyancy being affected by temperature, and this is my attempt at making that look like it functions in the way it's supposed to, with these two furnaces. And you'll see there's a little bit of an odd thing going on with the smokestacks on top of the furnaces, and this is all thanks to the debug stick, which allows me to change the state of the blocks. I've gone over it a little bit in more detail, this tool, in a previous video. You can check that out if you like. I've also changed the state of this furnace with the debug stick as well. It's just a simple click, which is nice. Moving back here, we've got this cabin, and you'll notice throughout the ship there's these three roofs, and these, in my mind, are supposed to be wind deflectors, and they deflect wind, obviously, away from stations. So for example, here's the station where you'd control the ship. I don't have a wheel, though. I'm going to have to put that in sometime. And here, of course, is the station where you control the lift. Inside here, it's quite cramped. There's also a little cargo hold down there. Tried to use as much space as possible in here because it's a ship, and I wanted to reflect that it does get used in its aesthetics. So I did so, and here's the trapdoor up to the top. Down here, I've got sort of a kitchen area slash storage room, and here's a little pantry. Whoops. Look at me making a mess. And of course a lantern down here, and the reason I have the lantern down here is because if I don't have the lantern, you can see there's these lights that show through. It's just a lighting glitch in the game. It's really hard to avoid, but in order to maintain the shape, I had to carve it out to its utmost extremity, so I can't actually carve it out anymore. So that means the lighting glitch is present, and I'm going to have to put a lantern there, which is fine. I think it fits. And yeah, so let me know what you think of this kitchen area. I'm pretty fond of it. Anyways, the final step in this ship is to build the sails, and it's one of the hardest steps because of the complex shape of the sails. You can't just build it using a formula. I mean, you probably could, but it would be a pretty complex formula. So you kind of have to eyeball it, build some, eyeball it some more, and do it like that. So it's probably one of the more time-consuming parts. So I'm going to try to demonstrate my methods once I finish. Alright, big reveal, here's the sail. And I know it is quite small, but that's because this ship is floating in the air. And so it has less resistance than a boat that would be floating in the water. So I figured the sail should scale to that. You'll also notice that it's quite, well, not puffed out very much, and that's because it's kind of sitting stagnant. That's my idea for that. Since the smoke is going this way, there isn't much of a breeze going this way, which would be puffing the sail out and pushing the ship. So it's just kind of sitting here. That's why I didn't bulge it out. And where methods are concerned, mine is pretty simple. I just made an outline using this light gray wool and then filled it in to shape using the white wool. And I know there are better methods than this. However, I'm kind of a novice when it comes to sail shapes, and I had a pretty complex shape of mast. So this was the best I could do, and I know it's not great, but I think it fits for this build. Now, coming over behind here, you can see I've got another furled up sail, and this is supposed to be the rudder, sort of. Since this ship isn't in the water, it can't really control its direction using a conventional rudder, so I figured it would use a sail. Now down underneath, you'll notice this little thing, and this is a counterweight, and this is what keeps the ship from, well, tipping over. Obviously, it's quite heavy up there since there's a giant sail and mast, so I figured the ship would need some sort of counterweight, and this is it. And I figured smooth stone would look nice because it looks kind of refined. Anyways, that's it for this build. I do really hope you enjoyed, and more importantly, I hope you took some kind of inspiration away from this to build weird fantasy floating ships in your own creative or survival worlds. Thank you very much for watching, and I hope to see you next time. Farewell. Oh, here's a fly around before you go. I figured you'd want one, since I haven't really done that. I need to do that more often. I know sometimes I miss out and I just kind of rush through things and you don't get to see the whole thing, but there you go. Hopefully that works out.